I'd like to open with this little poem that was written for Columba, or Columbakill, as sometimes he's known, which is our saint of today. He's the high saint of Ireland, although he went to Scotland. So he was the son of kings, and so and had his fair share of troubles around his life. But if my research is correct, there are churches named St. Columba in several different denominations: Catholic, Anglican, Episcopal, Lutheran, Churches of Christ. So his
it's interesting.
His
Good time.
things that he did, because he's the founder of Iona, but the way that he is known and the theology that he represents transcends not just years, but denominational differences. So, that gives him some credibility, I guess. And here is this little part of this little poem. It's not a little story. This is not a story of a fool. It is not one district that is keening, nor a grief of one harp string. He, our rightful head, God's messenger, is dead. The teller of words who took away our fear does not return. The learned one who taught us silence is gone from us. Good his death, he went to God. Angels met him. He knew the way he was going. He gave kindness for hatred. He broke the battle against hunger, healer of hearts, satisfier of guests, shelter of the naked, comfort of the poor, their souls light, a perfect sage who believed Christ, nor went away from this world, more steadfastly bore the cross. So it's upon his death, and so those are just a few lines from that, written by blind Dallin Fordell. So it did say a little bit about his life, though, doesn't it? About what he did and what he brought and who he was.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that she's included him in this chapter about wandering. Don't you think? I would have chosen, I was just talking to Maisie and Sharon about this yesterday, but I think I would have chosen Brendan. St. Brendan, who went out in a boat with no oars, which is pretty much what this chapter is about. It's not getting a motorboat and then mapping out your plan to get to the distant shore. It is getting in the boat and letting God guide your boat. Yes. Yeah. God guide your boat. Amazing.
Allison, it says in the chapter though that this was either a tradition or a requirement. I don't know that it was a requirement for all the monks to, and there was a name for it, getting into this boat without a oar or a. So it was.
Yeah, true. We only have,
the
peregrination.
Yeah, I couldn't do it without looking at. That was part of it. Anyway, I just thought that was just so powerful.
Yeah,
it illustrates it so well. The peregrination, the wandering without an oar. Letting God.
Yeah. Right in her first paragraph, it's wandering, but wandering for the love of Christ.
Yep.
How lovely is that? So it's not aimless in the sense that we might feel it is. In preparing for this afternoon's talk on solitude and loneliness, it's much like solitude. It has a direction. It's not just daydreaming, right? It has some purpose, and so the purpose that it has is the same as the purpose listed here about the wandering, which is for the love of Christ. So there is a destination, right? There is a purpose. Yeah,
Just don't know where it is.
you don't know where it is. And you don't know that you're going to be able to measure it. Is it going to mean increased sales? Or, I don't know, what are some other ways we measure things? More likes on Facebook? Or, I don't know, more friends, or more money in the bank, or how's that? That's a pretty good list, isn't it? What's,
Yeah.
It can't be measured that way, and that's hard for us. It's hard for me because there really aren't many places where you get rewarded for kind of holy wandering. That's not the way we were raised. That's not what we were taught, and right? We're taught that there should be a goal, a purpose, a thing, a something, a proof, and there is, but it's not quite on that list of tangibles. Right? It doesn't fill a lot of those, check those boxes for folks, or for, even for me, because that's just not the way I oriented my life for a long time. We oriented our life differently. Doesn't mean you can't want things or need things or have things or be great at pickleball or, but it is a little different to be okay with going out for a walk and then, not clocking in your 7 miles or your seeing 14 waterfalls, or I don't know, there's so many things like that, just even in a walk.
Yeah, it seems like
Even around, go ahead, Lynn.
Lynn, go ahead.
everybody has to wear a Fitbit, or they're looking at their watch and counting their steps and, their miles or whatever. And I don't own those devices. I've just not ever been that person. I'm just different. And I think about the differences between my husband and I, and Gary's always been pretty driven. He has been a wonderful father. He has taken really good care of his family. But I think maybe that left me free. Not that I didn't raise our children. I was a stay-at-home mom, but I think it just left me the time to do what I'd always wanted to do, was to be a homemaker and to be in my garden and not be concerned with those things. So he has had the responsibilities. I've had responsibilities, but just different. If that makes sense.
Yeah,
Well said. Well said, Lynn. Yeah. That's good. I have to, at some point in this conversation, tell about this, because we were talking about dreams, and about 3 or 4 nights ago, because this is so relevant to what's going on in our study and reading and in my life and everybody's life, I guess. I had a dream that I was at a retreat of some sort, and it was over, and everybody set out for home, and I set out for home not on foot, because I was on some kind of a stick that could motivate. It was like a pogo stick, but it didn't bounce, and I was riding it, and I was riding it down highways and at highway speeds, but anyway, the point of it was that I needed to get home. I wanted to get home. I had no idea how to get there. And I just had to set out. So I set out, not knowing what highway to get on. And I looked and I saw a young woman walking, and I recognized her, and I knew that she lived somewhere near me, so I could follow her and get on the right road to get home. And basically, other than vague details that I, could throw in that I can't probably relate to anything, but basically that was it. And we went together on this pilgrimage home, and but it was so apropos to what we've been talking about. I mean, I had no idea how to get there, and I just started out, and I ran across this girl who I knew was going the way I needed to go. And
I love that, and I think, isn't that the way, and I'm trying to remember the words in the chapter about, she uses that Abram and Sarah, right? And that's what they did. They set
Yeah.
out.
yeah, twice.
They knew God was with them, but it wasn't like God was even leading them.
Right. They were walking before God.
Walking before God, yes. I loved that phrase, and
Me too.
I don't think I'd ever thought of it that way. And it's so interesting that your dream reflects that too. That's such affirmation. I you, yeah, walking before God. And I think they use that language in the Genesis story too, like in the Adam and Eve story, right? Adam and Eve walked before God.
Mm.
And I can't remember if that's right or not, but I think I like it. It is.
Yeah.
And because so often we do look for signs as opposed to just setting out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's so it's such a dichotomy, because we a lot of times I talk about myself when I lose touch with God in terms of running out ahead of him, trying to, as a bad thing, that instead of being led by him, I criticize myself for running out ahead of him and not listening to him but to my own navigator, and get in trouble. But this is a different approach to that. It's like setting out with a blindfold on, in faith that God was going to be in, that wherever we go, wherever we end up, God is there and using that place to give us what, I don't know. There's just so many ways to look at it in a different way. Running out ahead of God, walking before him, knowing that he's the navigator somehow.
Right. And I think in a different time in our life too. I've been struck by that a couple of times over these past several weeks reading the book, is that there's a time and a place for things. There's a difference than being, when you're 18 and when you're 68. There's a way difference there, and that we have to develop the trust to know that God is there so that we can go before us. I mean, Abram wasn't a kid. Abram was seriously, I kind of had been around the block a few times. So welcome, Lawson.
Someone's at the front door
Welcome.
doorbell.
I'll see you in a minute.
Okay. So whereas before, when we might need to be led by the Spirit, like Jesus was, into the desert, right? There are times when we need to be led somewhere, but this is talking about when we've reached a certain, I think, time in our lives when we can trust God that God, that we go before, and that God's. We're not like we're getting ahead. It's just the order of things right now, and it's about our what is our faith at that time? Is it steady? Maybe is it? I'm sure if we went back and could look at all that dream, Maisie, I'm sure it had all those moments in it, like where you hesitated, where you went, where you thought maybe you weren't going to get home, but then a person shows up that you recognize, that is familiar to you in some way, and that you trust that you guys are going to be going in the same direction, so.
And you think about, why would God say, go before me? Why not? Why wouldn't he say, keep your eyes on me, I'll lead you there? Because so much of our lives, when we look back on it, or sometimes fortunately can tell when we're in it, that he has us go before him, so we know that we don't have the reins, and we don't know. It's just not in us, but that it's a walk in faith. It's like Abraham did not know where he was going, but God told him to go there, and he had to trust God. And I think when we're told to walk ahead of God, we have to trust him to somehow be in charge. And sometimes we don't see him, because he's behind us. But
Well, I think there's a certain amount of discernment that one has to have had, I think, prior to that. I think that Sharon.
All of you have had babies, and of course youngins. And did you let them walk behind you, or ride their little tricycle behind you as you just walked forward without seeing them? No, probably not.
Oh, what a great
Probably
point.
not. You probably had them in front of you, and not because, okay, if they go off the curb, now you're going to go off the curb. But I don't know. I see kind of a leading there that's really important. It's important to be on the backside.
It is.
good
So,
point.
and what does that develop in children too? When they know that you're there, right? They know you're there. They're not out on their own, but they also have that sense of trying to do something on their own.
Right.
Have their own agency and their own way of doing it, so I think that's a beautiful analogy. Thank you
It
for
really
that.
is.
Yes, yeah, and it has all those components, right? Trusting that because when I first taught my kids to ride a bike, I was right next to them, right?
Yeah.
I was
Catch them.
holding on to the bike, right? But later, I just was there cheering, happy, and wanting to be near enough by that if there was an accident, I could come running with the Band-Aid. So yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Sharon was we were talking about going before God, and she was giving the example of when your children are like riding a tricycle or riding a bicycle, you are behind them. You are watching them from behind. And
they aren't grumbling about, why aren't you leading me? They've got the sense of freedom to go where they want, but they also have the sense of security, knowing that you are there.
Yeah.
And would pull them in from any danger.
Yeah.
Wow. I just think that's beautiful
Excellent.
example. Yeah. Yeah. So we've just been talking, Maisie had a dream, and so and it really was a dream about this chapter. It really was a dream about going before God and what that looked like. So awesome to tie those things together from chapter 2 and chapter 3. Anybody else with a dream or an experience of this chapter? If Bob and Pam were here, I would say it's interesting because their boat is named,
Peregrine,
whatever that is, Natio, but it has a motor, and I've ridden with Bob Anderson, and he goes very fast.
Oh.
He definitely knows where he's going and how fast to get there. So, anybody else? Anything else from the chapter?
so good. I love the part toward the end about the finding things. I'm drawing a blank on. Oh, and drawing in the hat and pulling out a word that stood out to you in your journaling, and then making one line of a poem using that word. I just love that. I can't wait to try it.
I know. I'd hoped I'd have time this week. I have not. So
Yeah.
I'm confessing to you. I was hoping maybe one of you had. No? Okay, well, let's see if we can do that for next week. That is a great exercise, and if you haven't read that far, it's how to construct a poem out of
Yeah.
words that you just may have written down or discovered, and it can be connected to your, I love the way so many of her ideas and concepts and practices are woven together. So, you know, if you go outside on a walk and take a picture of something and then look at it, did a word come to mind for you, right? And it could be that. Or did you have a dream in which maybe, Maisie, the word is, I don't know, a stick. I just kind of want that in the poem somewhere. You
I
know,
don't know what that was about. That was
I just love that. Like a walking stick, you know, something you lean on, but
I was just sitting on top of it and it was going and I could
Maisie, I mean this in the kindest way possible, but I told Allison maybe you were a witch. You were riding your stick.
ride my stick. Well, yeah, that could be.
I don't really believe that, but that's what came to mind.
Yeah. I mean, it
Sure.
was so funny, and it believe me, as we went down that highway, it got lots of attention. People, you know, were staring, and I don't even think I felt I needed to explain it because I couldn't explain it myself. It added some comedy to it, I guess. I don't know.
Say that because I've been accused of riding a broomstick before. So.
so there was a line in here that the monks used that their journeys or their lives, he's one of their pilgrimage guides, describes these journeys as a destiny rather than a destination.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. And that is a different way of thinking about our journeys, because our journeys are generally very intentional. And we talk a lot about intention in a spiritual life. So it's the balance of that. It's the being intentional about maybe not knowing what the outcome may be. Sharon, you probably can relate to this, and I know you can, Lawson. We have grown up in a time of outcome-based education. We teach to what we want everyone to learn, and it was a new concept, you know, in the late 70s, early 80s. And man, I mean, I thought it was important. I thought that was the most important thing we could be doing. And I think what we realized somewhere along the way that it's not that it's not important, but it often misses the other things that we didn't consider as outcomes. Right? It had a limited scope of what those outcomes were. And so we sometimes miss the other things that were happening and we didn't name them as outcomes. I think it had great intentions, like most things, you know, like most things. So a destiny, which feels a little large, very large. When I say destiny, you know, it's your destiny. It's, you know, what you were intended for. It's your purpose, that kind of thing. And it's a big word, destiny. And destination we can handle, because that might mean Ingalls or the post office, right? Destiny, that's a little bit broader.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm thinking about a young man right now. He's been Savannah's best friend since they were 4 years old. They started preschool together, and they will graduate from Ripening out together next year. But I saw his mom week before last at prom. He escorted. They weren't dates, but he escorted Savannah during the promenade, and they take pictures on campus. But I asked his mom. I said, "What is he thinking about for college?" And she said, "It's not something we can discuss." And I was like, "Well, what is so secret about it?" And she said, "He doesn't want to go to college. He doesn't know what he wants to do." And she said, "I'm really concerned." And I said, "Mary, they're 17 years old. How can they know? A lot of them do, but a lot of them don't. So just don't worry about it. He's going to be fine." So, I hope, I mean, he's a smart young man. He's very artistic, and he just doesn't have a clue what he wants to do. So let him wander. Maybe that's his destiny. Maybe he'll find what he really wants to do.
Mhm.
I wish she could be sitting here this morning listening to this, and maybe you would make her feel a little bit more comfortable.
Oh, I think it's harder when it's your kid and
Well,
he's 17 or
absolutely.
18 and you think,
You
well,
know,
if they wander, they're just gonna be lost.
exactly.
You know, they're
Yeah.
gonna go, I thought that about my own
Oh,
children.
sure.
And neither one of them did what they thought they were going to be doing, for sure.
Yeah. Well, what is a popular T-shirt now? Those who wander are not lost.
Yes, right.
That's what
But
this.
what is it again, Lynn?
It's a T-shirt, and it says, "All who wander are not lost."
Oh, yeah.
I think it's
Yeah.
a quote from,
Where did it come from?
I don't know. I'm sorry, I don't remember. I probably should know, but, like a famous philosopher, let's just say that.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't a T-shirt maker. I mean,
No,
it didn't-
no. I think it's popular in the mountains, but like if you go to the Mass General Store, you'll see
Yeah.
it there probably because they know people come to the mountains just to hike and wander around. But anyway, I'm sure it's sold, made $1 million or more, but anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's been a pretty important theme to me, as I look back over the years and my dark night of the soul, and then coming to the place of, to me, my word was to float instead of try to swim against the tide, but to turn around and float and let God take me wherever it was, because my attempts to get there had only, put me in the hospital. And so, yeah, the just giving up and letting God come up behind me and direct, and somehow direct.
Just lost them.
Oh, no.
And my fetish for fairy houses has illustrated the word para, what is it?
Yes.
Yeah, because I see myself like crawling around on the ground looking for treasures, and it's just so much fun, and it's so beautiful, and it's just wandering is really become a great joy for me. Looking for the treasures that are all around.
Love it.
I find destiny as a kind of a scary word. I mean, I have on several occasions and at many different ages decided what my destiny was supposed to be, and thank God that wasn't true. That's such a closure. That's such a closure that even to me says to God, "Don't tell me what to do. I got this. Here is what I see my destiny being, based on my knowledge of God and based on what I'm doing for a living." But I would have been wrong many times.
Well, I think that maybe that was a destination for you.
Yeah.
See, yeah. Maybe destiny is different in that it is of God. And doesn't mean that the things you're doing were not godly. I'm not saying that. But I do think they change and they develop and they grow and you learn. And then a whole other part, we are forgiven. So for our indulgences of thinking that we are God, we are forgiven of those as well. The quote comes from J.R.R. Tolkien. I looked it up. That's something.
Oh, good.
Because of The Hobbit. Oh
Yeah.
my goodness.
Yeah.
Why didn't I know that?
Yeah. So think about that and The Hobbit and that he, Bilbo is not lost.
No. He's one of my favorite. I love little Bilbo Baggins. He's one of my favorite all-time people.
Yeah.
Or he wasn't a person, I guess, but
He was a hobbit.
It was a hobbit. Yeah.
And say the quote again, please.
All who wander are not lost.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Gosh, I can't believe I didn't know that.
Yeah. Well, I didn't remember that either. So my only thing that's to maybe try to Sharon, would just be that perhaps those things you thought were destiny were actually destinations. Like, I want to be a blank. Whoops.